Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Chad Evans. I'm with the Council on Competitiveness, and I'm really honored to be here with all of you and to be on stage with this incredible slate of leaders who are poised to help all of us reimagine the concept of place, reimagining the concept of place in the context of an ever-evolving, hyper-competitive national innovation ecosystem. In today's fiercely competitive, tech-driven landscape, it's an imperative that we leverage all of our assets and capabilities. That means harnessing the full potential of the talent, the technology, and the infrastructure in our communities to drive innovation and economic expansion. But too much of this country's history, when it comes to emerging tech, cutting-edge industries, has been concentrated in just a handful of metropolitan areas. In fact, between 2005 and 2017, 90% of private sector innovation job growth occurred in 5 metropolitan areas: Boston, Seattle, San Francisco, San Jose, and San Diego. These cities obviously boast incredibly concentrated innovation workforces, well-established regional ecosystems, and this was all built on a range of factors over decades to convey a distinct competitive advantage. And yet, it is increasingly apparent that there are real national consequences, even downsides, to that hyper-extreme regional concentration. A recent study, 2023, from the U.S. Department of Commerce, found that geographic income inequality in this country between 1980 and 2021 increased by 40%. So while the United States' historical regional concentrations may have helped to get certain innovation clusters and get certain industries off the ground, today we've got to just think really differently. We've got to think bigger, deeper, broader, more inclusive, more diverse when it comes to building that sustainable, tech-driven, innovation-driven economy of the future. So there are many more regions in this country, many more metro areas, rural areas, that have distinctive and valuable contributions to make to create more opportunities for discovery, to achieve the productivity gains and the industrial transformation we want to see, and of course to ensure growing and inclusive prosperity. That's why the Council on Competitiveness, our National Commission, and this debut competitiveness conversation across America is taking place. We are urging a strategic pivot in this nation toward a new vision of place-making innovation, including supporting and investing in a vast array of ecosystems around every corner of this country. For this part, Tennessee, and that's why we're here, is paradigmatic. It's an example of what it looks like to invest in place-making innovation in the 21st century. Investments in industries like the energy transition from electric vehicles and batteries, that's already adding an innovative edge to an already robust manufacturing sector in this state. But Tennessee's growth is not confined to just one industry. Let's look at venture capital. 2023, venture capital in this state, $1.5 billion. That was up 42% year over year. A 42% jump in 1 year. Unbelievable. And just over the past 2 days, we've all felt the impact of Larry Ellison's announcement to move Oracle headquarters to Nashville, to leverage the incredible capacity and capability of innovation in health in this state, in this region. New data is also revealing that a crop of cities and communities across America, and this is inclusive of Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, and Nashville, are gaining ground, while cities like Boston, New York, San Francisco are becoming a smaller relative share of the nation's innovation economy. And finally, we've all learned a lot, or are still learning a lot, from the COVID-19 pandemic. That pandemic accelerated some transformations that were already unfurling. But today, of course, we realize place, yes, is physical, but innovation places can also be virtual. Innovation places can transcend all sorts of traditional boundaries. The Council's work in the late 90s and early 2000s to define innovation clusters, the big discovery, the breakthrough of that initiative was the fact that economic activities transcended traditional political boundaries. So today, the third decade, 21st century, I'm going to ask this panel, what does place mean for Tennessee? What might it mean for Tennessee going forward? Are Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville as natural a place together as, say, Chattanooga, Chicago, and Calgary? Knoxville, Kyoto, Kuala Lumpur, Memphis, Mumbai, Mexico City, Nashville, Nairobi, New Delhi. So I think the question is no longer how do we become the next Silicon Valley. Our question today, and the panelists are going to get to it right now, is how do we make our places, our communities, the most innovative, creative, and inclusive they can be to compete in this world of turbulence and transition. So we're going to get right into it. Insightful, actionable impacts from 2 mayors and 2 great economic development leaders. And I hope these insights will also be scalable to the national level. And so I'm going to ask this first question of everyone, but mayors, I'm going to turn to you first to answer. We know large-scale innovations don't occur in a vacuum. They don't happen in isolation. That's why we're talking about innovation ecosystems and regionality. So with that in mind, I hope both mayors can maybe share a little story, what's happening in your city or your community that is really accelerating innovation. And then Jamari and Ted, I'd like for you to weigh in as well on that same question. And then I'd like each of you to think about what is the one single thing you think is most important in that innovation acceleration that you're experiencing in your community. So Mayor Kincannon, perhaps we'll go to you first.
Well, thank you so much, Chad. I'm thrilled to be here. And I want to share with the group here a conversation I had when I first took office with Bill Haslam, who was mayor of Knoxville before he was governor of Tennessee. And he told me at that time some concerns he had as governor about that winner-takes-all pattern where those 5 metro areas were getting all the jobs and all the innovation and all the venture capital, and what we could do as mayors to counteract that. And then a few months later, the pandemic hit. And we all pivoted, and I heard the previous panel talk about how that catalyzed a lot of innovation and change. And even though it was a very, very challenging time for our planet and for mayors and leaders, it did reveal to us that people can work remotely, that we can innovate for public safety to save lives, create vaccines, get face masks out to people, whatever that may be. So I think that proved to me that first thing is about Knoxville is that you talked about the top 5. We are number 8 in terms of R&D assets because we have UT Knoxville. We have Oak Ridge National Lab. We're the headquarters of the Tennessee Valley Authority. That's something that most communities our size would envy. And so we're very fortunate. So I think in Knoxville, we are growing in recognition of the assets we already have. And also, one of my favorite presidents is Harry Truman, and he once said, "It's amazing what you can get done when you don't care who gets credit." And so I think that recognizing our assets and then collaborating in a way that you don't care who gets credit, those are things that are happening in Knoxville, and we are growing almost maybe as fast as Nashville. People have discovered us. I'm a trailing spouse of a UT professor, and here I am mayor. So Knoxville is a place of opportunity. You can come here, and you can come to Tennessee and make your way in a way that maybe it's a little harder in some of those other more established places.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to come back with a question because I know it's a really important day or two for you as you have your, I believe, State of the City address, and I'll come back to you. I have a question on that. But Mayor Kelly, I'd love for you to weigh in. What's working in Chattanooga?
Well, thank you, Chad. And again, it's an honor to be up here with my friend Mayor Kincannon and Ted and Jamari. It's an august panel. Hopefully we'll all learn a lot. But again, Chattanooga is a little different. I think it's important to say. And in my approach, again, I came out of the business world, specifically the entrepreneurial world, and ran for mayor. I'd never run for student council before. So, I mean, it was a bit scary for me, but I kind of screwed up my courage to do it because I was scared. And I had read a book called The New Geography of Jobs that really illustrated, and of course, Rise of the Rest and all that, that there was this kind of invisible Mendoza line in the United States, and we were on the wrong side of it. Candidly, necessity is the mother of invention, and most of what Chattanooga was born out of, scarcity, right? Again, candidly, our university has not historically been properly resourced, and so some years ago, forefathers were smart enough to and it was a long ball to throw at the time, to issue some bonds and go out and put in municipal fiber all over Chattanooga. And at the time, it was hugely controversial. And you know, the long knives came out from the private sector. This is going to be a disaster. It's going to fail. Well, again, it's a city utility. EPB now has 75% market share, I think. You know, you can get a gig of fiber for $67 a month. You can actually get 2.5 gigs, which I just did at my house. And so that really has been our biggest innovation. And because of that culture of scarcity, I think more importantly, Chattanooga has a culture of innovation because it's had to have one. Like, we've had to make our own way. We're not a state capital. We don't have, I mean, I'm here to fight every day for UTC to make sure UTC gets its fair share of resources and that you know, grows and expands. But that fiber has allowed us to do a tremendous number of things. It's attracted a tremendous number of people to Chattanooga, you know, during the course of the pandemic, who now can work from home, which was an unanticipated benefit for us that we never saw coming. And of course, now it is some of the greatest, it offers some of the greatest test bed for quantum research in the country. And in fact, in some respects, is a unique asset in the United States. The only other place you find big loops of dark fiber like this is mainland China. So we think it's a really key resource, and are working closely with Oak Ridge National Labs on how we expand that. Again, well, I'm sure we've got a panel later on quantum, but you know, we're here to make sure that Chattanooga is at the forefront of that.
Well, Mayor, we're going to follow up on that. I'm going to come to Mari and Ted really quickly, but I want to seed for you this idea of, I think we would all love to learn a little bit more about Chattanooga's cauldron of creativity, and that cauldron is fired by, I think, what you just described, this long-term vision that I believe Paulo mentioned that even on the panel before, recognizing where we are today but planning for the future. So I'll come back to you as where you think you're headed. But Jamari, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience in Nashville, where we're in your neighborhood. Would love to hear your thoughts on where you are today and where you're going.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. And obviously, this is on the heels of some record-breaking news for Nashville, which we're super excited about. Where Nashville is going and where it's been really starts about 30 years ago. 30 years ago, the city, our Chamber of Commerce, our business leaders, our workforce development individuals all came together and said Nashville needs to create a plan. And that was our innovation piece that has kind of really set the tone for Nashville's growth over the last 30 years. You don't get a Fortune 500 company saying Nashville is the place I want to raise my family, but also bring my global headquarters, without creating some of those key foundational things that make a community unique and really focusing on that community aspect. And I'll highlight one of our really cool community programs that we have, which is called the Academies of Nashville. If any of you are residents of Nashville or have students in the public school system, I highly encourage you to learn a little bit more about that program. It is a program where we have 35 different programs that allow students the ability to take a test drive in their careers of choice. And we have that in all of our high schools. There's 12 high schools that tap into this. Students working with the private sector have the ability to do some job shadowing, dual credit programs, industry certifications, along with college scholarships. That's that foundational piece that gives you a nice connection from community-based building, which is the education, and also career building, which gets you to those jobs of the future. And so those are one of the really cool things that we're doing and looking forward for Nashville. And I think, Chad, one of your other questions is, what is one of those key things around innovation? And I'll say one of our biggest struggles around innovation is trust. You have some really brilliant individuals operating in silos around the globe, around the city, and being able to break down those walls and those silos and getting that trust factor of sharing your idea, knowing that it's still going to be your idea, you're still going to get the credit, but you have these other organizations that can amplify that. And so that's one of the really cool things that I think we're working on in the mayor's office to try to push our innovation forward, is breaking down those barriers of trust.
I love this idea of trust, Jamari, and this gets back even, Mayor Kincannon, your point around it's not about taking the credit, it's about creating a community feel and a common mission. Ted, maybe you could amplify or talk a little bit about the Memphis experience. Would love to hear that.
Yeah, so what's accelerating innovation in Memphis is really building on our legacy, and you heard from Rob Carter just prior to this, it's what we're known for. It's the supply chain. And having FedEx headquartered there really has broadened that industry sector where we have 120,000 supply chain and logistics experts and professionals working in our economy every day, looking to maximize the global supply chain. So we're looking at supply chain 4.0 as being that mechanism to unlock more and more potential, not just in the existing industry that we have there. And most of that, mind you, is built on the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure of what we call the 4Rs, and Rob touched on that as well. But it's also then applying the Internet of Things, AI, and the digitization of all of this to unpack that into technology stacks that are relevant to what we're seeing now as our catalytic shift toward advanced manufacturing, with the advent of Ford and SK announcing their largest investment ever in the company's history. And I know we've got friends from Ford in the audience today. And so how does Memphis seize the day in this moment where we're seeing more and more advanced industries, namely manufacturing, come to Memphis because they know if they make it, they can get it anywhere in the world through all of the modalities of transportation. And when you combine the intersection of that and this incredible state-of-art technology stacks that are going into these manufacturing facilities and the cross-junction of a supply chain 4.0, it spells a really bright and I think significant economic future for Memphis that really, in our mind, is a full shared prosperity because, and this is just a footnote, in Memphis, we actually just surpassed Detroit as having the highest African American population in the U.S. And because of that demographic, when you look at supply chain and logistics, you look at manufacturing, you look at IT positions, Memphis actually leads the nation in the representation of African Americans in those industry sectors, and it's not by a little amount. So we see that as really being the driver for our acceleration into the economy of innovation.
Okay, so I want to come back to all four of you. A lot of themes emerged. When I asked you for this sort of key idea, some things I heard were trust and community and, taking credit together. Infrastructure, technology, talent, investment. You just mentioned the catalytic Ford investment. I think I saw the data. It's something like, since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, I want to say it's over $15 billion coming into Tennessee. And we just talked about the Oracle announcement. These are massive change agents that are happening in real time. So I'm curious, and I'll start again with the two mayors, and Jamari and Ted, please just jump in at any time. How are you all handling and thinking about that sort of change, pace, acceleration, scale, and scope? And I'd love to hear even some of the challenges, but also, of course, the opportunity space. But Mayor Kincannon, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, you can imagine I'm a big fan of what I like to call Uncle Bill and Uncle Ira, the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Just helps me remember them. But they are bringing millions of dollars into Tennessee and into Knoxville. And to me, we heard from business leaders and also us at the forefront here, how Tennessee is a leader in mobility because of our interstates and because we border 8 other states, and so we're at the crossroads of America, and we have relied on that to develop our business and economy. So how I expect, and I am going to try to deploy our infrastructure investments and our IRA investments to make sure that mobility and energy of the future can also be clean energy, because transportation sector is also our biggest contribution to emissions. And we need, when we talk about an innovation economy, people want to come to Tennessee and people want to come to Knoxville because of the opportunities there to work at UT, to work at the labs, to join this innovation ecosystem in our state and in our city. But they also want to breathe clean air, and they want to be able to live in a place that is beautiful, that has great schools. So these innovations, these investments by the federal government are a game changer for Knoxville. We also just got a $42.6 million grant for reconnecting communities that will help repair the harms of urban renewal, and I know that that's been an impact in other parts of our state as well. I just want to say, when I hear about Blue Oval City and Oracle and other amazing things happening in our state, I think it's important for Tennesseans to realize this isn't a zero-sum game. And when I heard about that, I wasn't like, oh, I wish Knoxville had gotten that. I'm like, okay, well, we are going to supply the brain power to do the new battery technology to make sure that all of our EVs are the best they can be, and we have the brain power to make that happen. And so it's not a zero-sum game, and we just have so much positive momentum. It's a very exciting time.
It's exciting. Mayor Kelly, I'm sure you want to jump in.
Well, yeah, so I would echo Mayor Kincannon, and we were infinitely grateful to the Biden administration. These infrastructure investments are not bridges to nowhere, right? They are wise. They're a lot more thoughtful than I think a lot of people realize, and we are hard at work putting them to use. Also around green technology, EV charging because of Volkswagen. I could talk all day about Volkswagen and how grateful we are to have them. But one of the things I'm honored to serve on is I'm one of a few OECD champion mayors in the United States, and of course there's 40 around the world. And so there was a great white paper they put out a couple of weeks ago about the value of infrastructure investments and the relationship to GDP growth. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't realize we're behind. We're behind our OECD peers. Tennessee is behind the national average, and so these are really, really important. But to Mayor Kincannon's point, right? We need and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we need the workforce. Not only do we need the workforce to be able to take advantage of these, if we don't do a good job of workforce development and reforming our school system, we could actually make disparities worse in our cities. So we work really hard and have been working really hard at making sure that everybody in Chattanooga can take advantage of those, and that we can use this incredible opportunity to actually heal our historical wounds, which are gross. I mean, if you look at the disparities, the data, it's shocking, honestly. And so, but the good news is we can fix it, right? And I would finish by saying that the government has to lead in this regard as well. The first book that I had my cabinet read when I came in was called "We the Possibility" by a guy named Mitch Weiss, about public entrepreneurship, which at first you're like, that's like a fish on a bicycle, right? But it's a thing. And so we really need to meet the moment in local government, because this is where, with apologies to our friends from Bridgetown, the rubber meets the road. I mean, if we don't lead, then it's not going to happen. So we have to go at the speed of innovation and the speed of business. And I think we're fortunate to have political leadership across the state that does that.
Mayor Kelly, and maybe I'll take the moment to dive a little deeper with you and Mayor Kincannon on this point, especially around this idea of lessons that we can deploy, yes, across Tennessee, but also around the nation. Mayor Kelly, you opened your intervention here today with the incredible story of fiber, the emerging incredible story of quantum in Chattanooga. Mayor Kincannon, you talked about the incredible innovation assets and infrastructure from UT Knoxville to Oak Ridge to a whole range of others. But we also know, to your point just now, Mayor Kelly, there are many distressed communities in Tennessee. There are many communities, because I have the data here, 16% of households in Tennessee don't have access to an internet subscription.
That's outside Chattanooga, sorry.
That's not Chattanooga, but it is Tennessee. And so what I'm anxious and interested in hearing from you all, and also Mayor Kincannon and Jamari and Ted, how can we expand the successes of your 4 great cities, yes, across Tennessee, but even across a nation that has even worse data? Tennessee is not the worst in the United States. There are many challenges we have to face. And so one of the, I think, ideas behind this competitiveness conversation is, how could the rest of the country learn from you all? So I'd love for some thoughts on how you are tackling this challenge, and what we might amplify nationally. Anyone?
Ted, okay, so that's a lot, but let me tell you what we're doing. We talked about the federal packages. We're also seeing an opportunity to unlock the potential of those grants and the impact that they're having by utilizing and targeting the Economic Development Administration and all of their grants that they have. Yeah. Memphis was one of the recipients of the Good Jobs Grant. We just clicked send yesterday on our final proposal for the Recompete grant, and I know Chattanooga, Mayor Kelly, you're a finalist for that as well. Now, mind you, that was the most subscribed grant application in the history of the EDA. 600 applicants, only 22 were finalists, and we were proud to be one of those. But what that will do in Memphis, should we be awarded the opportunity, is we're focusing on 92 of our persistent poverty census tracts. And Memphis is bringing that average down on access to fiber. And so how we're doing this in the map and the systems building that we're focused on is, assuming the award, we're going to focus that on upskilling and accelerating the skills attainment in tech spaces, in tech fields, in those 92 persistent poverty zones. Mind you, we also have just recruited one of the nation's largest fiber infrastructure development investments, $800 million, coming from a company called Meridiam. They're France-based, but they are developing high-speed fiber in 85% of our neighborhoods. Right now, about 60% of people have access and utilization to high-speed fiber. And the majority of those persistent poverty zip codes and neighborhoods do not. So this will equalize that. And there is no barrier on the up and down speeds, and Mayor Kelly knows more about that than probably anyone in the room. And this will give Memphis that opportunity to seize that moment from a connectivity perspective. So that is how we're going to focus on creating economic mobility that is truly inclusive. And when we talk about place, the neighborhoods that define the fabric and character of who we are known as Memphis globally, and being a majority black community, we are one of the recipients of the Tennessee Place Makers Grant through the Economic and Community Development Department. And it's also focused on those business owners in those neighborhoods. So now you give them access to the high-speed fiber, we're giving them skills in tech spaces, and we're giving them the technical expertise and scale and investment for them to open their businesses in their thriving neighborhoods.
Mayor, thanks, Ted.
Yeah, I would just say you asked what can some others learn from our communities here in Tennessee. And one thing that I have learned is that sometimes your biggest weakness can be turned around to your biggest strength. For many years, Knoxville, if you haven't been there, is very hilly. It's just mountains and mountains and mountains. And people were saying, well, we can't, it's so hard to develop these ridges and mountains. And thank goodness, because now our undeveloped ridges and foothills are a beautiful asset and have become a huge part of our park ecosystem. And that is a draw, because our biggest challenge is when people want to bring their business, they're like, do you have the workers? Do you have the talented workforce here? And then people need a job, they need housing, and then they need fun things to do to enjoy their life beyond work. And so our biggest weakness, the hilly topography, has now become one of our biggest assets. And so to the extent that you can think through whether you're in wherever, La Follette, wherever you're going next, Indiana, Boise, whatever your perceived shortcomings are, see if you can switch that around and make it an asset. And also, imitation is the highest form of flattery. We're starting the 865 Academies, modeling after Nashville's, and we are a few years behind, but we started under my administration high-speed fiber as a municipal utility and putting close to $1 million in it from the city to bridge the digital gap for those families who couldn't otherwise afford it. So I learn from others and appreciate all the good things happening in Mayor Kelly and with Nashville as well.
Yeah, I'll add, I love what Mayor Kincannon just said. You're taking the risk of making investments today that will probably not see a return in your administration. And I think that's something that is very difficult for politicians to do, is take a risk today, because I need to run again in 4 years, or I need to run again in 2 years. And so all of my policy decisions are led to that next running point. And so I love that you're taking those risks. And that's what I would share with other communities, is you have to take the risk of putting in a long distance investment, because it doesn't have to pay out for you. I mentioned Nashville has been on this roller coaster for 30 years. There were investments made 30 years ago that are paying off today. At the height of the 2008 downturn, the city of Nashville invested in a convention center. We've seen an explosion of investment following that. We brought in a football team, we brought in a soccer team, we brought in a hockey team. We've done all these things that are long-term, forward-facing things, but you have to take that initial risk. So that's the one thing I would say, if a community is looking to replicate what we're doing here, take risk.
You know, it's a really interesting point, because I think, yes, it takes a lot of courage in the public sector to take this risk. I think it takes a lot more courage across America than we realize. I mean, I also look at our private sector leadership that are constantly pressured by quarterly returns. So how can we, even as a nation, try to spend a little more time in devoting our energies towards a longer-term perspective? And that might be something else we can, I think, learn from Tennessee. But Mayor, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, no. I'll just kind of try to keep it brief and chip in. But look, I'll go back to something that the chancellor said when we started. You know, Tennessee has a long history of working together, right? I mean, again, current sort of media environment notwithstanding, which we're not entirely immune from. Again, you've got Howard Baker and Phil Bredesen are two great examples from either side of the aisle, who we've just had a great, and it comes back to community and a sense of community, and again, as the chancellor said, radical collaboration, right? I mean, that's the one thing I think that the rest of the country could look at Tennessee and learn from, because that's absolutely necessary to accomplish this stuff.
Radical collaboration also, I think, implies people. People collaborate, right? Obviously, organizations. I'd like to hear from each of you a little bit about your thoughts on the challenges and the opportunities in the workforce space in your community in Tennessee. It sounds like there's a lot of interest from companies around the world to be investing here. So they're seeing, obviously, yes, beautiful hills and ridges to climb. They're seeing incredible academic resources, national laboratory, TVA, incredible resources. But I think ultimately they're probably seeing the people who are underpinning and driving those organizations. How does Tennessee stand today? How do you see yourselves ranking, I don't want to say amongst yourselves, but with the nation, with the world? And what are you doing to maybe even accelerate and improve your already what I think is a pretty strong position? Does anyone want to jump, Mayor?
Well, before I was mayor, I was on the school board for 10 years, and I've been a teacher, and I think that is a really important fundamental ingredient to our successful future. We obviously have a lot of amazing partnerships with University of Tennessee and the higher ed communities and across the state. But before they get to university, they need to be successful in high school. And I love the approach that they take in Germany with the exposure that I think those academy is emulating that. But even back further, before you even get to kindergarten, families need high quality, affordable, accessible childcare. And so I think that we are working really closely with the United Way, with the Chamber, with businesses, with higher ed, because everybody needs these things, because the kids need it for their support, and the family, their parents who are working need that too. So I think that's an area where we are making progress, but we need to talk about investment. For every dollar you put into pre-K for childcare, it's something like an 8, probably much more than that, return. And those are investments you don't see in 10 years. It's 20 years later. It's not, and it's in our innovation economy. It's also in people who avoid the criminal justice system and all those things. So I think that's an area where we're making progress, but we could double down on that.
Yeah, I will just say, I wore my state workforce development pin today because it really is about what we broadly call workforce development. I mean, the first time I thought about running for anything was actually working on an educational reform effort called Chattanooga 2.0 that happened after Volkswagen chose to come to Chattanooga. We had this sickening realization that we had essentially misled them in that we did not have the workforce that we told them that we had. Sorry, Pablo. And we scrambled around to fix it, but that led to really deep and serious reform in our educational system to Chattanooga 2.0, which now, we have future-ready institutes. We're really still at work destigmatizing, what we used to call blue-collar jobs. We're now sort of calling them green-collar jobs, and working very closely with industry, including Volkswagen, to meet the needs of industry. So it's not just, again, and I will say our workforce development system in this country, for the rest of the country, is broken, right? I will a shout out, the House passed, I want to say it's HR 6655, without much fanfare, but a workforce development reform bill that needs to be now adopted by the Senate that will fix WIOA. Now, for those of you that don't know, that's the acronym for the federal dollars that come through our workforce development system. That you literally have communities working around them because it is so broken and so bureaucratic and so doctrinaire. It's got to get fixed. And so, again, along the efforts of radical collaboration in Chattanooga, we're really hard at work trying to figure out with our friends from Accelerator for America, Mary Ellen Weiderwell's here, to figure out how do we look at where are the best practices. They've been very generous with their time in Louisville. They do it right. There are other communities that are doing it right, but we have to fix our workforce development system to include K through 12 reform, post-secondary, and the way that we engage with industry. But I think we're hard at work at that in general in Tennessee, and working with Denise Thomas and her team at the state level. It's a huge opportunity. We have to get it right, and we're working hard to get it right.
All right, Ted.
Yeah, I'll jump in here on the workforce conversation. That's one of the things that's a real passion for me. Prior to joining the administration, Mayor O'Connell's administration, I was a site selection consultant, so working with the companies as they were out looking for places to land. And I recall being in a community, I won't tell who it is, but we were having a conversation with their local university, and one of their deans said, "We're not here to educate the students for a career. We're only here to teach them what we want." And I was like, I don't think the students have signed up for that class to just say, I want an education. They didn't come just for the degree. They came for a career. And so those are one of the things I think that I want to be intentional about with our administration. And one of the things that I'm working on within my office is creating a transparent career pipeline. Ideally, what I want to identify is about 70 to 95 different career pathways that will be future-facing career pathways for the Bridgestones of the world, for the HCAs, for the Oracles, for Nashville, and making that transparent for the student, for the parent, and for the corporation, so they understand what's coming through our system and being intentional about that being a career, starting in that kindergarten. And Ted and I used to work for Randy Boyd, who's now the president of the University of Tennessee system, and he used to talk about K to J. The mayor ran on opportunity. We call it K to O, kindergarten opportunity. What is that opportunity for your student, for your child in Tennessee, and specifically Nashville, and how do we put them on that pathway?
Yeah, so I'll be quick. A strategy we're looking at now and scaling into that will make us more competitive in the landscape is stopping the exporting of our talent. And that really does define place. It's the people that you have and their skills and how that's added to the economy. We are partnering with the University of Memphis, which is a Carnegie R1 institution now, joining Vanderbilt and UT in the state at that level. And so we're producing talent, but we have to create opportunities where we retain them. And hopefully we also create opportunities and bring in advanced industries and great jobs that attracts talent back home if we did export them. So that's something that we're doing in the workforce space that helps broaden and deepen place in Memphis.
We have a few minutes left, and so maybe I'll ask one final question to get your perspectives. I raised this idea that maybe, and it's been reinforced by the conversation because you're all extremely innovative entrepreneurial leaders. So I am curious, Ted, to your final point, you want to retain, you want to build, you want to create a place here. My guess is that you're not just acting local, you all are global leaders. So I want to understand a bit more about that other perspective. How are you looking to attract and magnetize Tennessee increasingly for a global pool of talent, and what are the opportunities and challenges you're seeing? It looks like, and from what I hear, you're already doing a pretty good job, but I think we'd love to hear a little bit more about the secret sauce of how you all are accomplishing this mission. So I'll start again with the mayors.
Okay. Well, I think that we are fortunate in Tennessee to draw a lot of talented people, not just from around the country, but from around the world. Our last panel was a good example of how international we are. And yet we are also the home of the flagship university where people are coming to UTK from all over the world, but mostly from Tennessee. And for many of them, Knoxville is a big city. And so the fact that we can welcome people from all over the world and from Hancock County and make them thrive in Knoxville and get access to the educational opportunities to be part of the advanced manufacturing, to be part of innovation economy. We have a huge challenge with the labor market right now, but I see it also as an amazing opportunity because we can't afford to waste a single person. We can't afford to say, well, you're from this rural place or you're from this really low-income place that, you know, the schools aren't good or your generational poverty's been a problem. We need everybody. And so knowing that and making people, inviting them to the table in a way that, you know, is welcoming and inclusive is huge. And I think mayors also can play a role in an international setting. I'm heading over to visit our sister city in Muroran, Japan in June, and I'm looking forward to you know, maintaining and building those ties, and some of them will be cultural and educational. We have a student exchange, but also they can lead to economic relationships as well. So a lot of positive things happening.
Mayor Kelly, so if we think of the United States or Tennessee, well, let's look at the U.S. 300 million, 400 million baseball team, 200 million not even on the field. To Mayor Kincannon point, we need everyone on the playing field. So what are you doing in Chattanooga to bring everyone on the field?
Well, again, I ran for office having never run for anything before and wrote it all down in a one Chattanooga plan, right? And sort of lashed myself to the mast with that. You need to get sleep tonight. You can take a look at it on the city website. 40 pages, but 7 big goals. And again, closing those gaps in our economy is one of the central goals, very specifically restoring vitality to the black community in Chattanooga. So we're very, very intentional about that. We opened an Office of New Americans to help our immigrant community better cope, and appointed the city's first chief equity officer. So again, we are also, I will say, quality of life in Chattanooga is kind of our stock and trade. We've been a very welcoming city. When Volkswagen came, I was one of the co-founders of Chattanooga FC, our soccer club, and the reason we did that was because we wanted a universal medium that everybody could plug into. And as Pablo knows, we're both fans, everybody can plug into that game, right? And it's done that, right? It's a thing that everybody can rally around, everybody can understand it. You can go out there and kick a ball, which we have done, with anybody from around the world. So it has to be, all, y'all means all, as we say a lot of times around here, and it has to mean it, but it can't just be lip service. And so we're trying to make sure and put the structure in place in Chattanooga to make sure that is the case.
So you're bringing to life, I think, a word that Jamari used, intentional. Jamari and Ted, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. So in Nashville, we're taking one of my favorite films, The Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come approach in Nashville. We've been doing that for a while now. We've got some really cool neighborhoods. We've got the entertainment. We've got cultural districts. And we also have, some amazing universities like Vanderbilt and the 4 HBCUs that are in town that are really anchors to draw talent here. And so we've been really poaching those individuals that have chosen to come to Vanderbilt or Tennessee State University, Fisk, Meharry, and getting them to stick here by creating a community that they don't want to leave. I was just at a local company a couple of weeks ago, AeroBuild, who a colleague introduced me to, and this individual moved to Tennessee with a guitar and a dream, and he now is running a manufacturing operation out of Nashville. So we've done a pretty interesting approach with that, Build It.
Ted, please.
Yeah, so I think all of our cultural assets do draw an international audience, and Memphis is certainly lucky to have a lot of that traffic. For us, I think it's leveraging the globally recognized brands that call Memphis home. In addition to FedEx, you have St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which has a true global reach and a global workforce that is drawn to this place that has purpose and meaning and impact. But Memphis is also home to the highest concentration of medical device manufacturers, and we've got the two largest medical device companies in the world with significant operations in Memphis, being Medtronic and Stryker. And so we are truly an international connected city because of supply chain, because of these global brands. And for us, it's just a matter of diversifying that. And right now, in our economic development pipeline, 25% of my projects are what we call foreign direct investment. And it's the companies that are coming in understanding that they are entering not just Memphis in the United States, but Memphis, which is an internationally known market with internationally known brands. So we're going to continue to optimize on that.
I want to thank the panel. We had an incredible conversation about the criticality of diversity and talent, technology, investment, and ultimately infrastructure and innovation. And I'll give a plug for a session tomorrow on a topic we didn't get to, but which I'm really sorry we didn't. It's about the great energy transition, because you all are also leading in your communities incredible work there. And so I come back tomorrow. Our Chair Emeritus, Chad Holliday, has an incredible panel on that. So thank you, panelists.